Hello again, everybody. I'm Dave Simons here for the Simon Says podcast. And I know that I look a little different than normal, but I would say that I do look great.
You're not wrong.
So on this episode this week, we are going to be chatting with Simon Says, Dave Simons, to go through some of the highlights of his career and also discuss some of the ups and downs that he has participated in throughout the last 30 years. So, riding shotgun with me today, Dave Simons.
Can I grade you on that?
Yeah.
You know, for starters, not bad, not bad. You've got the looks, so you've got that down, which I don't have. That comes naturally. You got the genetics, but I would give you a B.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
See, I was going to go with a passing grade of about C. That's where I was at
Man,
right now.
you are a harsh grader for yourself. Okay, let's call it a C plus.
I will take
because
it.
that gives you more ceiling to work on.
That's right. I always like to come in and under-promise, over-deliver.
Yeah, well, you under-delivered there. Let me tell you something.
So
this is weird, by the way. This is weird for me to be sitting here. I feel like I'm not in control, and I don't like that. Like I don't know where this is going.
I think you're correct. And I think, too, it's different from my perspective as well, because I typically see your videos, you leading the way, start to finish, adding another person in. We figure out what our dynamic is, and we'll work through that together.
All right. I'm not sure where this is going to go. You're going to ask, like, personal stuff, too? Or just
We are
business?
going to get into the nitty-gritty. Yes,
All
for
right,
sure.
Let's do it. I have nothing to hide.
So when you started your career, you transitioned from working in broadcasting to being a financial advisor. Give me a little bit of that background there. Tell me why you ended up making that transition. What was the thing that pushed you over the edge to say, this is what I have to do?
You know, usually when I'm asked that question, I will get into some specifics like, well, this happened. I was told that I needed to go out and cover this story that I didn't agree with because at that time the media was starting to become more sensationalistic. And you have to remember that I grew up in the Walter Cronkite days and went to broadcast journalism at Mizzou, where we took things very, very seriously at the time. But I'm going to kind of answer that in a little different perspective, because I think this will help explain some things a little bit better. The media was, and we've really seen this lately now, where the number of viewers in traditional media, as we know, have come way, way down. People are getting their news in a lot of other sources. That was already starting back in the early 90s. We didn't have the internet, but we had cable, and that was starting to flourish. So you started to see the numbers coming down. So they started to pare back. And at the time, at the very end, I was as you mentioned, I was the weekend sports anchor and weekday sports reporter at the CBS affiliate in St. Louis. Well, they took away a producer. They took away some other folks, and then I was just this one-man band going crazy. Well, at the same time, my wife was pregnant with our first child. Hello, Taylor. Hard to believe. She's in her 30s now. And I had a decision to make at that time, and I think I've told you this story before. I don't like the direction that the industry has taken, and I think I was like 31 at the time. I can either sit here and hang with this for as long as possible, or if I'm going to make a change, I need to do it now. The problem was, it's a very important problem. I didn't think I had any other skills. I didn't know what else to do. That's all I ever wanted to do was a kid. I'm serious. I used to mimic Jack Buck in the 60s and then Johnny Carson. I just loved everything that I saw on television. And I needed to be in that role in some capacity. So that's why I went to broadcast journalism and got more into the serious side of it on the reporting side, and then eventually over to the sports side. So my wife and I had some very long, deep talks about this, and I just knew someday, I still had hair at the time, but I knew I was going bald. Genetically, that was in my future. So I also knew that the media was starting to hire younger people, cheaper, better looking. So someday I'm going to be an ugly, old, bald guy in his 50s. And they're going to decide, who is making too much money. And they're going to decide for me, you're gone. Well, then what am I going to do when I'm 50 or 55 years old and start a new career? So I had a stockbroker, traditional stockbroker at the time, and I was lamenting my fate with him one night, and that's when he said, he goes, you would be good at this. Good at what? He said, what I do. A stockbroker? I hated economics in college. I hated finance. And he said, no, that'll come later. The actual objective part of it and how to pick stocks and all that. You're already good at the subjective part. And he went on talking about how you communicate well with people. You're very trustworthy. Thank you. That comes from him. And he said, I've known you for a long time, and I think you can relate to people. And that's the intangibles that are going to help you build the book. So I hope that answered the question to some degree, but that's really the start of it. So I went in both feet flying, and trust me, in those early days, it was hard. It was really hard, and you wondered if you made the right decision, but I think I did.
So when you talked to Susan about this in those early days,
Who's Susan?
your wife,
Oh,
Susan,
yeah, that's Susan. Okay, got it.
what did those conversations look like? What did she tell you, or what sort of things did she present to you that made you feel like you were going to be successful at this?
Well, that's a great question, because you have to have a supportive spouse in a situation like that, because I took a big pay cut. Right. I wasn't making a ton of money in the media anyway, but I was making even less in those first couple of years. So you take this big pay cut. We have our firstborn on the way, and I'll tell this story. So she was totally supportive, and I worked 7 days a week, 5 nights cold calling in those early days, and just grinding it. And I'll tell you something, Brandon, I thought that I was being unfair to Susan at first, because when our daughter was born, I was still working these long 70 and 8-hour weeks, and she had colic, and it was really, really tough. And I thought, what did I put my family, my wife, through to do this to her when I had a more stable career path? And one night in particular, and you know that I don't really drink, and you don't drink hardly anything either. We're somewhat teetotalers here, but I would have beers back in those days, all right? And I bought a 6-pack of Bud Light on a Friday night. Coming home, I just thought, I just need a beer or two. True story, my wife started tearing up, and she said, we can't afford that. Why are you buying? Do you really need that? We're barely making things, meet. We're barely, we don't have a couple of nickels to rub together. I was so mad at myself after that, because that's when I thought, what have I done? What have I done that now I'm in my early 30s and I can't even go to the store? But I think back then it's like $6 or something.
Right.
So yeah, those days were tough, and I'll just go forward a couple of years later, because I'm talking about my wife tearing up, but she teared up in a completely different way. I started to make it, and now I'm making more than I did in the media, and then some. And then when I showed her at the end of the year our taxes and what I had made, she was like, we're doing this, aren't we? And I mean, it was so awesome. I thought, I'm so glad we stuck to it, so it all paid off in the end.
And I think that sums it all up, because you look at it and you go, you have to have someone who's supportive of you and your goals and dreams for you to be successful. Because she could have turned things against you
No
in
doubt.
so many different times and said, if you had just stuck with what you were doing, we would be fine.
Yep.
We wouldn't be struggling the same way we are now. But you had a different vision. You had a different vision for your family. And now you look at where things are 30 plus years later, and you didn't regret any of that. And so you feel like this had to be God's calling for you.
Well, you're so right. 36 years, 37 years of marriage coming up, and it does take a team. And man, you learn to be humble. You learn humility. That's what, to me, makes a marriage work. That you can say, I know I'm right in this. I know I am. But this particular subject matter, whatever might be the disagreement, is so important to her, I'm going to let this one go.
Right.
And I might fall on my own sword here. I don't think that she's necessarily right, but there are bigger battles maybe that are more worthy of a debate. This one isn't it. But I'm so lucky that any of the big life decisions that we've had to make together that could have been contentious, and sometimes they are, ultimately we come together, and she's so good at saying, I'm going to trust you in this. Anything to do with big career decisions, any big money decisions. I don't know that I feel comfortable, but I'm going to trust you in this. And you know what that feels like, knowing that you've got your partner who is with you on this. And somehow, man, we've made it work all these years.
I was going to say, from just a personal standpoint, going through those same situations, maybe not to the same degree as you did, but just having that support system, that lifeline, knowing that someone believes in you 24/7. Well, you can go out and run through a brick wall to make sure that your family's going to be provided for and is going to be able to continue to live their life the way that you want.
Isn't that the truth? You know, I did a podcast, you may recall, a couple of years ago with my mom, so we talked a little bit about this stuff, but I come from a family of divorce. My mom's been married several times, and I can go into whether it's aunts and uncles or siblings or whoever and other people in the family tree. And unfortunately, it's very rare for someone in our family to have stayed married for many decades. And so I had that fear all the time that it's just inevitable. I talked about the inevitability of losing my hair. In a way, I thought we had the inevitable gene on both sides of my family, by the way, that at some point we would likely get divorced. And I've got to tell this story. I don't think I've ever publicly told this story. And people are going to say, there's no way you did this. But this goes to my wife, since we're talking about her. When we were dating and it was getting serious, so we're talking mid to late 80s now, in Kansas. So I was working at a TV station in Wichita. My wife is from a small rural town in Kansas. And it was getting to the point where we were even talking about looking at rings and all that. I hadn't proposed yet, but it was like, okay, we know that's where we're going. And I had a very serious discussion with her. And I said, you know, I just want you to know there's a good chance that we might get divorced if we get married. I want you to go in with eyes wide open. I really said that to her. And she looked at me like I was speaking Greek because, look, there's no perfect family, of course. But to me, her family was Leave It to Beaver. Now, she would tell you, well, again, not perfect. But from my eyes, when people were saying, love you, hey, have a great day, love you, we never heard that word in my family. Never. We didn't hug. There was no that kind of affection. So I didn't feel comfortable in it. And when I was dating Susan and going to her house and I saw that, I got to be honest, I didn't look at it and say, oh, that's so sweet. I thought, that's kind of weird. And so am I marrying into that? I'm going to have to get comfortable with that. So back to that discussion, and I said, you know, I don't know that I've got the gene that's going to, I don't have the role models to look at and know how to pattern and how to get through conflict in marriage. And you talk about God's handiwork. He's like, he gave me the right woman here, because it's like there a lot of women, it wouldn't have been right for me, but she was, because she had that grounding sense. And whenever, you're not going to believe this, I know, but we've had a couple rocky moments in our marriage for 36, 37 years. It happens. But I wasn't the one grounded in that. I start thinking, oh, is this the end? Now, I don't think that way anymore. I'm talking about early in the marriage. Is this the end? I knew this was going to happen. And she would pull me back in and just say, no, we're getting through this. And she's wonderful. I love her to death.
So you saying that about the trying times in your guys' marriage, what do you think were the personality traits that overlap in your personal life, but then also in your financial career as a financial advisor, that have made both of those successful when you look back on them?
Well, okay. So first of all, I will say this. My wife and I have virtually nothing in common. Nothing. It's the old Donnie Marie. She's a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll. And that is literal. As you know, I'm a big rock guy. She's country. She's from Kansas. So there's a little crossover in some music, but not a lot. We read different kinds of books. She reads the novels. I have to have that's based on real stuff. I'm a big documentary watcher. She's bored by that. I could go on and on and on. Movies. We can never agree on a movie. It's like, how can you not like this movie? Or tell you one thing that just I've learned not to do because it just drives me crazy. Susan, you should see this thing on YouTube. This video, it's 3 minutes long. It's hilarious. And I'll look at it, she's like, I don't get it. I'm like, why do I do this? but somehow, there's that commonality, and I can't really articulate what it is. And then you ask in connection to that, some of the traits that I have personally that help me in business.
Yes.
And, let me think about that for a second. I think that, and I don't know where this comes from, but I have maybe I do, my journalistic days. I have a very curious mind, and I love to ask questions. And it's not because I feel I need to, it's natural. I have a natural interest in the person sitting right across the table from me. I want to know about you. When I meet somebody for the first time, Susan and I will joke about this. She goes, wow, you were talking to Bob over here at the party for a long time. Oh, he's a fascinating guy. Let me tell you what I learned about him. And I'll just start. And then I'll realize Bob never asked about me. And that's okay, because I don't know that that's natural for a lot of people to also have that curious mind. So I think that really helps, and people feel affirmed when you do that. And I also think I have a pretty good ability to read people, body language. Does that come from my journalistic days, or is that more just natural? I don't know, but I have it. So if I am meeting, let's say with a prospective client, I can tell right away when they leave. I know what the hot buttons are. They may not have actually verbalized it, but I can kind of see how they reacted to something. So I know what's important to them. I would say in general, those are the things that are part of my personality that have really helped me in my business.
Yeah, I was going to say, mentioning the thing where you ask a lot of questions, you get to understand what other people love, what hurts them, what are the things that hold them back, their hangups. And I think a lot of times people don't understand how to draw that information out of others.
Yeah.
And people love to talk about themselves. So if you can start down the path of asking the right questions to people, they will tell you their whole life story, more than they probably ever wanted to share. And then they still will feel validated when they leave, because you know who they are truly as a person now.
Well, and that's one thing I learned in my early days too, because I thought, well, I just have to ask the basic questions. So I would have my notepad and I'd say, okay, what do you have right now in your investments? Okay, you got this in your 401k, and how are you allocated? You tell me about your risk tolerance. Can you kind of describe that? I'm writing all these things down, and I think I've done this great job. I've gone, thank you very much. Hopefully maybe this can work out, and I'll give you a follow-up call as I put some stuff together. That's all important. You do have to ask those questions. Right. But you learn that there are deeper questions. There are heart questions. And a lot of times if there's a couple there and I'm talking to him, here's the body language part where I'll see her shift. Like, okay, something just happened here when I was talking about grandkids. This is really important to her. So I'll dig into that a little bit. What do you like to do for your grandkids? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I really want to make sure that we help with education. Like, great. Why is that important to you? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your own kids' education. And it's things that maybe they're not asked before. And that, to your point, Brandon, they start to open up.
Yes.
And it's very rare that I've ever had someone clam up. They're in there for a reason. They want you to know. And you want them to feel that you need to know that information to better help them with all kinds of plannings. The 2 + 2 = 4, again, the mechanics of financial planning are important. That's the objective part. It's all that subjective stuff that feeds into it. And I tell clients, especially newer ones, look, this is a learning process. You tell me, and I know you've seen this too, you tell me what your risk tolerance is. But the first time the market corrects 25%, you reacted differently. Now it's real. Now, when you've lost this money, you are feeling it. Let's talk about that. What are your fears? What do you actually believe could happen here? And once you talk through that, sometimes they realize, yeah, my fears are a little silly. I'm not going to lose everything, right? No, you're not going to lose everything. And I'll end with this. One of the great joys I have is when people leave the office, and you've been in the office with me when this has happened. But the client will leave and say, I always feel so much better after I leave here. And that's not my goal. It's not, well, I can't wait to get the Johnsons in here so they feel better when they leave. It's just part of the natural progression. It's part of the process. And anyone who comes in with fears, a lot of times they realize they're somewhat unfounded when we look at where they are, and even during hits to their net worth, they're going to be okay.
And I was going to say, having almost done this for 20 years, you've done this for 35 plus years. The most important thing to, I think, both of us and everybody on our team is always making sure that people know they're cared about. And we always watch out for them. We want them to know that they're in great hands working with us. And it goes back to your point, when people say they feel great after they leave, that makes us feel fulfilled too. And so when you were building the team, we go all the way back to the very beginning, and you were deciding to build this team out that's turned into more of a robust team now. We all have our intricacies, we all have our benefits and pluses that we bring to the team. From a personality standpoint, what was it that you were looking for when you were adding Tom, Kathy to the team in the very beginning? And subsequently, you've added other people since then. But what was it that you saw in those early days when you knew that the sole proprietor was probably not the end outcome that you wanted? You wanted to build this team.
So when things were going well for me, late 90s, and I was making it now, and things were happening, and I was building a book, and okay, this is going to be a career. I knew if I wanted to get to where I envisioned my business and my success, I could not do it alone. I had an assistant, but it was given to me by, she was given to me by the firm. I didn't have my own person, which was fine. It worked out just fine. So I get to 1999, and I love telling this story, that back in my seminar days, and I had a seminar out here in Chesterfield, and after I did the seminar, I get an email from a young person who's a senior in college at SLU, majoring in economics and finance, and saying, I don't know if you wouldn't know me. I was in the crowd. I was in your seminar. And by the way, I am not a prospect. I'm a poor college kid. I'm like, yeah, I know what that feels like. But I was there with my dad. And the reason why I wanted to show up is because I wanted to get into your field. And would you have 30 minutes for me that I can come in and talk to you about how you started and maybe how I could start? I love that. Like a lot of times when clients will say, I've got a kid or grandkid who's graduating, can they talk? In fact, I just did it yesterday with a client. They live down in Florida. And they said, my son is in college and he's majoring in your field, in finance, economics, investing, and all that stuff. Could you talk to him? And I did, and I loved doing that. So yeah, sure, this guy comes in. His name happened to be Tom Cordes. And Tom didn't know it at the time, but I was getting ready to maybe hire my first junior partner. Here's the funny story about that. What I was looking for is someone to do some prospecting for me, if not cold calling. Back then, you could still do that. You didn't have caller ID and all that. People would still pick up the phone back in those days and be somewhat friendly. Well, you know Tom's personality. It's different now. You didn't know Tom back then. He was a little bit more of an introvert. He's not so much anymore. You know, he's matured into being a little bit more of an extrovert. Maybe I rubbed off on him in some way. I have no idea. But there's no way that he was going to cold call. It just wasn't going to happen. But I'm a big believer in the concept of you get the right people on the bus. You're not even sure what their actual talent is or what their specialty is. You just know there's someone special in this person that needs to be with me. and we're going to do some really great things together. And as you know, I'm a faith guy, as you are too. And to me, I just knew God's tapping on the shoulder. You need to talk to this guy. I wasn't yet ready to hire anyone. I didn't have the money, but I didn't want to lose this guy. So, long story short, I pulled him back in. He didn't know why I pulled him back in, and I made him a job offer. He's like, I didn't expect this at all. I basically offered him peanuts, and he knew that he could go and make more elsewhere. But he will tell you he felt the same thing. I don't know Dave Simons that well, but he's got something, and I think if we join forces, it's the Lennon and McCartney thing, man. We're going to take this thing into some magical places. And that's what happened. But Brandon, there is no reason for it to have happened. I was probably not smart hiring someone then. I didn't have the money. Tom was probably not smart taking the offer. He was making nothing with no guarantees or promises. But we made it work. And you talk about personality, I can't really articulate that. What was the attraction? Now, that's more important to me later. For example, when we hired you more than 5 years ago, now we're looking at the personality of the team. Now we're looking at our makeup, because Tom and I and Kathy Delmain has been with me also since '99. So how rare is that? It's very rare, as you know, because you've dealt with financial advisors your whole adult life. That's what you've done in your prior work. And to have a core together from now more than a quarter century is very rare. We've developed a personality. We've developed a culture. So to bring someone like Brandon Mallinckrodt in, buddy, you better mesh with us somehow. You had all the stuff we were looking for, but is your personality going to mesh? And obviously and thankfully, it has.
Well, I appreciate that. So when you mentioned the bus, getting everybody on the bus and kind of directing that bus in certain angles, degrees, certain directions, where do you see that bus going in the future?
I think you're asking this for yourself. When am I retiring? So you're take over. It's a coup, folks. That's really what he's getting at.
Yeah, we're changing the name. It's not Simon
See,
Says Podcast anymore. Take it over.
He starts with the introduction. Now I see where this is going. This was all intentional. Now you're taking over the podcast. You want to know what I'm leaving. Okay, where's the bus going? So you and I and Tom, we've all talked about this, so I guess I'll say this publicly for the first time. I don't have any major announcement. I'm not retiring anytime soon. But there's going to come a point where I start to pull back. I don't know when that is. But this is my baby. I was the one who started it many years ago. It's important to me. And, you know, it's not like I just want to drop off the keys to you and Tom and Kathy and everybody else on the team and say, treat her well, all right? Put gas in it occasionally, clean her up, you know, and drive her slowly, and please take care of her. I can't do that. To my last breathing days on this earth, I'm going to want to have some connection to this. Even if I'm not even working anymore and taking no income out of the business or anything, I will still be checking in just to say hi. And so where is that bus going? Is that I can see it still expanding a little bit. I can see it growing just by natural design as people's assets go. And as you know, we have some capacity to still add some clients. We have very high minimums, so high net worth people we work with. But at some point, maybe that's another person. Or a person, if I start to pull back from the day-to-day financial planning, which is going to inevitably happen sooner rather than later, then it's you and Tom, and then it's the next generation. Who is that person? So now we have 4 advisors with the patriarch Dave starting to maybe fade off. I don't ever see myself stopping like writing the commentary. It's in my genes. It's my reporting DNA. Still appearing on KMOX or, you know, however long they'll have me. Still doing the podcast. I love doing this. I don't know when that will ever stop. I will probably pull back on the financial planning process before I do that. And that would be my lasting legacy, I think, on this team.
Well, I'm never going to kick you to the curb. So you can
Thank you,
you can keep that out of your mind. But the reason I ask you that is there's so many changing things happening in our industry. And so we've had other people have asked you, "Oh, well, I'm getting ready to retire. I'm 63, 64 years old. You know, what does that look like for you?" And I think because of the way that the industry is changing with the ability to work from many different locations, I think that gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility for the future. So when we look at where the bus is going, I think the bus can go in many different directions and still have you leading the bus in certain areas as well in the future.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I just had my 45th high school reunion out at Wentzville High School. And by the way, it's funny when people say, well, what high school was that? Was it Holt? Was it back? It was one. It was one high school back then. The reason I bring that up is it's not just my industry. It's not just me. So we're all the same age, of course, in the reunion. We're 62, 63 years old. Most of the classmates I talk to are still working. And this is the curious mind part of it. So I'm talking to all of my former classmates, some who I literally have not seen in 45 years. And are you retired or you working? Oh, I'm still working. I'm doing this. I'm living in this state. I'm doing that. When are you going to retire? Oh, maybe in a couple years, not sure. I could do this till I'm 70. Your point about working remotely came up a lot. Well, I live in Florida now, but you know, for what I can do, I can do it down there and still be connected to the roots back here in St. Louis or wherever. That was fascinating to me. This is what I love doing is digging for that kind of information. So when I started in the business, the traditional retirement age, you get to 60, 62 or whatever, and that's it. That's gone. And I think the pandemic really changed it because, again, people have learned to work remotely. I think you know this too, Brandon, that you always, in our industry, you have to be flexible. And you have to be very careful because I've seen this before with advisors. They get into a certain way that they've built their book and they get set in that. And that's just the way it always is. And the world changes. Demographics change. People's viewpoints on markets change. New investment products, new technologies, my goodness. Yes. You better be up on not just AI, but this quantum computing that's coming down the pike. And you better understand the countries involved and the connections happening. And because of my curious, insatiable appetite to have knowledge and know, I'm always reading, I'm always looking, I'm always talking. Tell me more about this. I do not have a mechanical brain. I don't. And that's the big joke around here. I don't even know what side of a hammer to use. I can't do that. But I can read about these things and conceptually understand them and then know where the investment opportunities perhaps are in that. So I'm very excited about where the bus is going. I told Tony, the podcast producer on the other side of these cameras just now, this is more luck than skill. I didn't know you well. I didn't know Tom at all. I didn't know Kathy at all. The people who have joined this team have the hardest work ethic that I've ever known. It's incredible. The long hours that you all put in, the ability and the desire to help the next guy. You'll walk into Tom's office. What can I do now? I just finished up. What are you working on? And we'll go into Kathy's office. Kathy's got a stack of stuff. Kathy, and it's almost like, no, I got this. Kathy, please. We want to help you. Okay, she almost reluctantly gives something because she wants to be in charge of that. And I love her for that. The work ethic on this team is unlike, and I'll put us up against anybody. Not because you have to.
That's right.
Everybody loves it because it gets back to the client service relationship. And ultimately, we're doing this to make sure others are meeting their objectives and their happiness in their own lives.
I think the ability too for us to all come in here and know we have an ownership stake. When you walk into the office on a daily basis, you know that the success of this team falls on our shoulders. It doesn't rely on anyone else. So us working as hard as we do on a daily basis is because we all want to be successful and we all want to look out for each other. So looking at it from that perspective, I don't think that there's any better opportunity for the future and this team because we are going to continue to fight, continue to go out there and work hard every single day to make sure that every single client is taken care of, handled with white glove service, and they are just going to be able to live the best life that they wanted because they worked so hard for so many years, and now they've entrusted us to make sure that we see them through the end of their life.
Do you realize do you ever feel like you're lucky in a way, blessed,
Every
whatever?
single day.
How many people they go to work to work? That's what it is.
Yes.
And I'm not knocking anybody or anything. I'm just talking about us. This is not work for me. It's not. I know a lot of Americans, unfortunately, get to let's say they have a traditional Monday through Friday job, and Sunday night they're like, oh, here we go again. I frankly can't wait. And my wife may not like this very much, but I still kind of work 7 days a week. Now, granted, some days it might be 15 minutes, but because we've got the trusty laptop, we can work remotely at home. You're checking some emails, you're looking at some things, you're getting prepared maybe for Monday, you're seeing what meetings you have. Maybe I'll do some prep work now. It never stops. I can't tell you the last time where I'd say, today I did nothing work related. Again, like I said, even 15 minutes. But brother, we are so fortunate in so many ways to be in this industry, to have found each other, to have found this team, because I never, even if I feel famished at the end of the day, it's a joyous feeling.
Yes. And I was thinking back about what you said earlier when you went to the class reunion and you met people who were still working into their mid-60s and then didn't see an end to things. I think we started to realize that more and more with clients too. There's a certain mindset. There's certain clients that have to retire by a certain date and they just want to ride off in the sunset, not have to work, not have to have someone rely on them or be told what to do. And then you have other clients who have found that role where they feel like they can flourish and they don't want to have an end date. They want to just continue to work into the future because they get fulfillment out of it. What do you think is the difference between those two people? Maybe what was the upbringing that led someone to feel like this is the end? I know there were certain time frames in past where you could only work in a career until a certain age, and then there was that hard line in the sand. But just thinking about that, do you think there's anything from your perspective you've seen over the years that's maybe allowed someone to continue to want to work?
Yeah, this is going to be, I'm going to generalize here, but I think it's just the type of job you have. If you're what we might call a day laborer and you are physically breaking your back, I don't think you can't physically work until you're 70 anyway. If you're slinging a hammer all day or you're painting homes all day or whatever, those kinds of jobs, and you can't work remotely,
right?
Those kinds of jobs, so you literally have to go in and break your back doing that. Those kinds of jobs they don't have a long shelf life. I think it's not, I don't know that it's so much a personality trait. I really think it's just the job and the career. Now, life is interesting. I think about this all the time as I get older. All the little times you could have gone in this direction. And what would your life be like if you had made that decision instead of the decision you make? You can't know this, obviously. All I know is God has been so good to me, more than I deserve. But I think that I have chosen the right path most of the time, I think. Not all the time, but I don't know that. All I know is what I know, and this is the path that I've chosen, and so I've been very fortunate. I never felt like I was even working when I was in the media because that was what I wanted to do as a kid. I was one of the lucky ones. Until the last couple of years, I got to that point where I said, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. And it scared me. It scared me. I had never felt that before. And that started kind of that angle down to say, okay, then you need to think about doing something different. It didn't take long when I got into this business to realize, even though it was really hard, I wasn't sure I was going to make it, I loved it. I loved it. The cold calling. I'll tell you this story real quick here. Nothing's quick with me when I describe a story, but I'm hoping it's going to be interesting. When I was a rookie, and back in those days at the firm that no longer exists anymore, they would send the people they just hired from around the country at their various branch offices out to La Jolla, California for 1 month. That's a pretty good place to be. You know, I'm 30, 31, 32 at the time, something like that, early 30s. 1 month out in La Jolla with all of these other rookies from various ages. Some just got out of college. There was one guy who was 60 who was trying to start in this business. There were 93 of us. I remember this very well. The first day, we're all in this big kind of the conference room, and there's a stage, and this guy who works for the company is kind of a recruiter, motivator guy, and they start playing Top Gun, the music, and they show the jets, and this guy gets out, he's like, rah! I was so turned off by that. And I'm thinking, this testosterone, and this is like Wall Street the movie, or what would come out later as Boiler Room, and these kinds of movies like that. And I'm thinking, the women in here aren't into this. I think this is goofy. Anyway, the guy says, all right, everybody, look to your left. Look at the person at your left. Look at the person at your right. In 3 years, they won't be here. And I'm thinking, you son of a... And who are you? And he made me mad. And it motivated me at the time. Well, I'm not going to be the other guys. And he actually said, and I did not believe him, I thought he was lying. He said, only 10% of the people who start in this business ever make it. Like, why would you say that? Why are you discouraging everybody? I still, to this day, think that was all goofy. It was dumb. It was stupid. But we did a reunion. It was sponsored by the firm. 3 years later, all the people still in the business from that class came back. 9 people. I kid you not. The dude was right.
He was on it, yes.
10, and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And you know what, Brandon? I think it was kind of a combination. It was work ethic. Some people just don't have it. I saw it. It's hard to cold call strangers. Most people don't have that gift. I talked about Tom when I first hired him. Okay, buddy, cold call. It just didn't happen. It wasn't his thing. I enjoyed it. It was a challenge. I still have in my office to this day, anyone ever comes to my office, ask, I'll show them to you, stacks of daily report cards that I did for myself. I wrote down every call I made, how many I contacted, their names, did I send any information, were they a prospect every day? And I have this stuff. Some days I was making more than 300 phone calls, but my goal was 200 every day, Monday through Friday, and then follow-ups on Saturdays and Sundays. So there's the work ethic. The other thing, too, is I get back to being able to communicate with people and enjoying that and being a little bit of an extrovert and finding out about people. I would engage people on phones for a while. Now, there was a problem with that because I might be on the phone for 30 minutes enjoying talking with this guy when he had $5. I'm like, okay, I got to go. And one funny aside, because I had just left sports and some people still remembered me. And so... I'd say, I go through the whole thing and what I do now. And, well, Dave, I'm sorry, I'm not a good client for you. I either have an advisor or I don't have enough money. But you think the Cardinals are going to sign Ozzie in the offseason? I mean, what are you hearing? I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't have time for this. He wants to talk sports now because of what I used to do. So I would politely say, I got to go to the next one. So I think that's really, because you've asked this in a couple of different ways, what was the difference in my personality and what got through it? It's the work ethic, which we all share, and the ability to communicate and the desire to communicate to build that book back in the day.
And looking at it too, like I think having done that myself, the cold calling, hundreds of phone calls a day, I think it allows you to think quickly on your feet. I think it allows you to be able to form connections with people in a way that maybe other people who don't have that training do. And so looking at that part of your background and how you were able to utilize that to continue to build the business, what do you think was kind of that ramp or that time or point in time when the business just started to take off?
I'll tell you exactly what it was. Exactly. So to give it context, when I started in the business and I was really struggling those first days, weeks, months, and then I started to think, why would I have had that desire since I was a little kid to go into the field of journalism, into broadcasting? That was implanted in, that was a God-given thing, and now it's gone. And I'm in a completely different industry. Why? If I'm a faith-based guy, and I believe that God directs our paths and we have to listen to it, what did I get wrong here? So I pulled my pastor aside one day, and I told him this. What's going on? What am I missing? And he said, Dave, you don't know the answer now, but the answer's there, and it will come to you. I can't tell you why you spent your first 10 years out of college in that profession and why that gnawing desire to be successful there was implanted in you, and then it left, and now you're over here. Someday you're going to find out. So fast forward a couple of years from there, I start thinking, why am I not utilizing my background, my broadcast journalism background? I should be a guy who is interviewed on TV about financial things. I should be on the radio. I love to do it. I'm comfortable in doing it. I should be giving seminars. I'm comfortable talking in public. That's not easy for most people. I enjoy doing that. And my dad being a teacher and a professor, that's been implanted in me too. I love to educate. Nothing in it for me. Nothing in it. When I have done my radio show and I write my commentary, I've never asked for business, as you know this. I've never said, call me at this number. I've never done it. I present the information on my podcast, on the Simon Says podcast. All I ask is, hey, just subscribe to the channel. But I'm not telling people, if you want a second opinion on your fight, never done it, not once in 30 plus years. So I call radio stations in St. Louis and I say, have you ever thought about doing an investment show? Now, KMOX was taken. My good buddy Mike Brown was already on there. So this new station had just started called KTRS, 550 AM in St. Louis. And I just happened to talk to the new program director, program manager there, a guy named Steve Moore, who is a fellow Mizzou guy. But he was new into St. Louis, and he wasn't really sure of my background. But he starts asking around. Oh, Dave Simons. Oh, yeah, he was on TV here for a while. Yeah, I know him. Good guy. But I didn't have the same kind of background and experience yet as an investment advisor and a financial planner as some others who are now applying for this new role at KTRS to have the weekend financial show, and yet I got hired. Why? Because I was the only one who knew how to sit in front of these and sound like I knew what I was doing. So as I joke later, I don't know that Steve Moore even cared I knew the difference between a stock and a bond as long as I sounded good. I'm overstating that. I'm having fun with that. Of course he cared. But I got hired to do that show. And Brandon, that was in January of 96. And by a year and a year and a half later, the business went like this because you are seen as the expert. And I took that very seriously. I didn't want to be seen as a guy who's advertising, his business, because I wasn't advertising. I have never paid $1 ever to be on the show. I've never paid anyone to appear in the media. You hear it's saturated now, as you know, especially on, well, even FM now, but AM stations, all the financial shows that you hear, it's paid advertising. They're paying for that hour, that 2 hours. And I said, that day comes and a station ever says we're going to start charging you, I will pull back and I won't do it anymore. And that's ultimately what happened at KTRS. And so they wanted me to advertise. And that's no knock against them. That's their business decision. I fully understand. I supported it. And that's when I left. Yep. I'd done this show for 5 years and I thought, well, that was a good run. Turns out my buddy Steve Moore was now at KMOX. As a St. Louisan, as you are, KMOX is everything in the history of St. Louis radio. So I get hired over there to do the show, and that ran from early 2000s up until 2024, when that was kind of the end. And I decided it's time to kind of pull back. I still appear every Tuesday morning on KMOX, Chris and Amy show, but the Dollars and Cents show is pretty well done. But that's where the business just took off. And from there, I would talk about seminars that I'm hosting coming up, 2 weekends from now at the Ritz-Carlton in Clayton. And we would sell it out even though we weren't charging, but we'd have standing room only or people on the waiting list, 200 people.
Yes.
And we would split it into different ones, and then you would get clients that way. Where to the point, I need to make this point very, very, this is very important too as I step off second, but it's related to this. We talk about our business, right? The personality of it. I don't say this lightly. If I wanted to, I could have taken everybody who ever inquired about our services and brought them in as a client, even if they had $10,000 to open a Roth. And I'm being humble about this, but we could have thousands of clients and literally could manage billions of dollars. I never wanted that. I didn't want to be the biggest. I didn't want to have the most clients, didn't need the most money. We need to keep it smaller. So that's why we have the higher minimum, as you know, $2 million before we'll take on a new client. We work with dozens of clients, not thousands, not hundreds and hundreds. That's very, very important to us, as you know. That was, believe it or not, one of those good problems to have early on, as I had to make that decision as the radio show really took off. The seminars really took off, that we had to limit that. And I think you could attest to it that was the right way to build it.
Yes, I do. And I think the value that you have always provided, I think, is the thing that people have latched onto. You never paid to have your advertising out there or to be on a radio show. You just felt like, okay, I'll provide value to people who are looking for someone to manage their money, someone to take care of them, someone that they know they can trust. That's who would reach out to you. And you set these higher minimums, and you did that on purpose. There was intentionality behind that because you wanted to be able to serve these people in a form and fashion that you felt like they deserved, the same way that you would want to be taken care of as well. So I just think about how the business has grown, and it's grown in a very strategic manner. It's a lot of organic growth, all coming from referrals that we receive.
Yes.
Friends and family of current clients. So I think if we're looking at where the bus is going in the future, I think it's continuing down that path. We continue to build out the robustness of the team. We continue to provide resources and build out systems that allow us to continue to manage money for current clients in the way that we see fit, in the way we think they deserve to be taken care of, and being able to add more clients onto the team, I think, is where we're going in the future, because we continue to provide these services and build out the team to take care of clients.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And really, this reminds me that at some point, who's going to take over even the commentary? Or maybe that dies with me. I don't know. Or maybe I die until the day I die if I live to be 100. Again, I don't. I get asked these things a lot, as you know, especially from clients. When are you retiring? Are you going to still write the commentary? All I know is, as I sit here today in 2025 at 63 years old, I feel like I'm 35 until I walk in front of a mirror. And I think, oh, dude, you are not 35 years old. Look at you. But as you know, one of my great hobbies and addictions is the endurance training and workouts and racing and all that. That keeps me young. I still have that curious mind. That keeps me young. I have a very young soul. I just don't see myself stopping the things that I love to do. And as my wife, if she were sitting here today, she would say, I don't want him to retire.
That's right.
He's going to sit at home and drive me crazy because I can't sit still. I cannot, and I'm working on this, Brandon and Susan and Tom and everybody in my life. I'm working on trying to just take it all in and sit and be still.
Yes.
Know that I'm God, be still, all of that. And I'm trying to do a better job, but I get bored very easily. My brain is very active, and it's always going, always going. And so I just feel like I'm always needing to feed it with something. But I try to be constructive about it. I don't have a lot of wasted energy just to stay busy. As you know, I took up the guitar a few years back, and I'm enjoying that. I wanted to learn a foreign language. And so I decided I'm going to take one of the hardest languages. So now I'm learning Mandarin. I'm learning Chinese. I'm doing that on my own. I'm getting on various apps and stuff. And now I have a decent basic ability to speak some Chinese. I know, folks, I'm nuts. I just cannot just sit still. And so, hey, time to watch that documentary. I don't even enjoy reading novels. I read voraciously. I read every night before bed. But to me, it's got to be real life. Like I'm reading the latest book, Ron Chernow, the Mark Twain book. It's 1,100 pages long, and it's not big print. But I want to know, who's this Mark Twain? Who's this Sam Clemens that we all knew about? I know a little bit. I want to learn more.
Yes.
What am I going to ever do with that knowledge? I don't know. But I just maybe I will learn something that's useful. So I'll put that book down. I've already got some more. I just read a book on Mike Campbell, who is the lead guitarist for Tom Petty. In fact, it wasn't on him. It was him. His autobiography. I loved it. So now all I do is I go and I've been listening to Tom Petty again. I just listen to that. You know that I just drove all day from Texas. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm listening to some Joe Rogan stuff because I find some of the guests, Joe Rogan can drive me nuts sometimes, but the guests are very fascinating.
Yes.
And so here I am. I talk a mile a minute. This is my personality, and the outlet of running and swimming and biking and going to the gym is very, very good for me. I need that. So for me to sit at home and not do anything but watch TV, frankly, I know that sounds dramatic. I'd rather be dead. Seriously.
Well, I was going to say, everybody could see the invigoration that's back in you. And I think it's one of those things, too, where us starting our own firm has led to that.
Yes.
Life was very great before. It was comfortable. You were able to do as you wanted to do. All those extra activities you just mentioned were things that you could do consistently on a daily basis and have plenty of time to do that. Starting our own firm and all of the hard work that goes into building this space out, being able to get all the clients to move over, getting all the systems in place, was a ton of work.
Yes.
But I think you see the excitement in clients' faces when they come in and they just feel like, oh, this is our home. It's not a big box retailer wirehouse place where we walk in and you're going to see other clients who are with different advisors or people that you don't know. Our clients know each other. So when they come in here, this feels like their home. They feel comfortable here. And I've just seen it from my own eyes, how excited clients are to now see this new place.
No question. It's going to be weird to say this, and people are going to think, okay, now Dave really is a different cat. But I don't like to feel comfortable all the time. Comfort is great.
Yes.
Not 24/7. That's not me. Being uncomfortable is a great motivator for me. Challenging myself is a great motivator for me, and I love that. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's another reason why you and I both love this job. One day is not like the day before, and it won't be like tomorrow. So when we were deciding, what are we going to do? We're going to stay at our current firm, which we were before, or are we really going to do this thing? We're going to go independent, and now we are going to have equity in what we've built and what I've built. It's going to mean something, and we're going to be able to do more things for clients now without a lot of the red tape and regulations and restrictions, and really be able to do true holistic financial planning unlike we've ever done before. Are we going to do this? So I'm 62 at the time, a year ago. And again, traditional retirement for a lot of people. I can do the comfortable thing. People would understand. Clients wouldn't be angry with me. Oh, Dave, we're sorry that you're going to do this. Wish you'd stay around. We get it. You're 62. And now you're going off into the sunset. I'm like, no. I want to do this. This is something we've talked about for years. It's going to be hard work, man. And I think you would agree, it was probably harder than we thought.
It was a lot harder than I thought. I even set expectations very high for what it was going to be like. And then the hard work exceeded those expectations. So you can probably see I got a few more gray hairs, a few more wrinkles, things like that. But yeah, it was a lot of hard work for us to get things set up. But I think because we're all perfectionists, we wanted things to be perfect for clients because we know that's what they deserve. And so the hard work, like you're mentioning, definitely fell into that camp.
Yeah, so I talk about those choices I made, what routes I could be taking. So retirement, or at least going slowly in that direction, or we're going to do this. If I'm doing this, and again, we talked about my wife at the beginning, she's got to be on board because she knows you're not retiring anytime soon then if you're doing this. This is a new career path.
Right.
And let's do it. It's going to make me feel uncomfortable. It's going to be a challenge. And that gets the juices going for me. And so when we made that, it was everything and then some. And as we've talked about, I feel like a rookie again. I feel like it's back in those days in the early 90s without the cold calling and making a little bit more money than I was, frankly, back then. And so let's see this thing through and let's get the bus going now. The bus has just barely left the garage in this new Simons, Mallinckrodt, Cordis, Delmain team that we've got going, and then some others that we're just now adding onto the team as we go forward. So I am as excited as anything of where we're going. I can't wait. Part of me wants to go 5 years ahead and look back and go, wow, look at that. But don't want to do that. That isn't the joy, is the process. It's the journey.
That's what they always tell you.
Yeah.
But when you're in it and you're grinding out, it doesn't feel joyful.
Yeah, I know.
It does not feel joyful at all.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine was telling me about a book that he wrote or recently read called The Comfort Crisis. And what he was talking about, or what he was reading in the book, was that you need to do hard things on a daily basis. As men, you feel like I have to accomplish something. I need to get out there and I need to continue to push myself. And one of the topics in there that he was talking about, I'm not even going to say what it was because I don't want to mistakenly pronounce the word, but the premise was you need to do things to where you feel like there is a 51% chance of you failing.
Oh.
And find that thing in your life where you feel like the odds are against you. And it goes back to when you thought about switching careers in the very beginning. And I was thinking about you because I'm thinking, okay, well, he had this great life before. He could have progressed down that path, but he chose the path that he could potentially fail at. And there was probably a higher percentage than 50-50 that you were going to fail. You mentioned that.
90%.
Exactly.
According to them.
So you chose that path. And that's something that I admire about you, is always choosing the path that is going to get you to where you want to go in the future, not the comfortable path that maybe would just be okay for the future. And I think that's what we all need to do. We need to find opportunities in life where the opportunity for us to succeed is lower than the opportunity for us to fail.
Yeah. Well, man, that you just described my life's mantra, good or bad. When I wanted to learn a foreign language, why did I have to learn Mandarin? It has no practical use for me. I've never even been to China. I only know a couple of Chinese people who speak English just fine. I don't have to speak their language. If you want to use a practical language in this country, learn Spanish. Or if you want to learn French, German, Italian, or whatever. No, not challenging enough. That's how I think. Even my wife rolls her eyes. You're going to do what? Oh my gosh. But I've enjoyed the challenge of it. Endurance racing. First time, I did my first marathon in 2001. It, at that time, was the hardest thing I ever did. At mile 19, I was so mad at myself. Why would you ever pay money to do this? This is stupid. It's the hardest thing. A day later, when's my next one? And then I progress and do a full Ironman, which again, a full Ironman, you're swimming 2.4 miles, then you jump on a bike and go 112 miles on your bike, then you jump off the bike and then you run a full marathon at 26.2 miles. Are you nuts? Yes. Yeah, you are to some degree. I love the training. The race itself is it's fun. It's almost like a letdown in a way because the event's over. Now what? I would have done more except for my lovely wife. And this is the team part of it. And maybe this is where we can start to wrap it up here. I talked about you've got to humble yourself. And there are times in a good marriage where you have to do something that you don't want to do. But it's so important to your spouse that you humble yourself and you embrace her in that, and you say, I'm doing this, not just for you, but for us. And it's this. After my first Ironman, and she got so tired of the training, because it becomes a second job. You can't fake your way through an Ironman. Maybe through a 5K or something like that. Not an Ironman. You have to train for it. So I would do these, I'd work all week, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday I'd do a 4 to 6 hour workout. Biking, running, all that stuff. Well, then you're toast the rest of the day. So you're not really present for your spouse there. And on Sunday was kind of my swim day, just to stretch out a little bit. So you're still engaged. So it's a 7-day thing that you're training for typically. I did that for 7 to 9 months. I didn't really appreciate at the time what my wife was going through, where I just wasn't present for any of that because I'm still working full time. She goes down to Arizona with me. She did it so reluctantly. Again, on her side, she did it to support me, even though she hated every second of it. But she wanted to show her support. That was very important to me for her to be there. My 2 kids came, which was great. My daughter going to college at the time. So I had my whole family there. It was wonderful. And I thought, oh, that was my first time. I know I can do better.
That's right.
So what's my next Ironman going to be? Back in the hotel that night. Or it might have even been the next morning. I don't remember. But it was at the hotel down in Phoenix. And my wife said, did you have a good time? I said, man, I can't believe I did it. When I crossed the finish line, I was actually crying. And I said, I can't believe I actually did that. And yes, it was tough. I don't even want to think about another one right now. And she goes, okay, good. Because you can do your second Ironman with your second wife. And she looked just like this. She wasn't joking. And then I'm thinking, oh, I always worried about divorce. Okay. I admit, Brandon, that I was a little mad about it. Like, she's going to take away that joy? But we talked through it, and she said, Dave, do your marathons. Do your half Ironman. I've done 9 of those. You cannot do another Ironman while we're married. You just can't do it. So humbled myself and say, I'm doing that. I'm not doing another Ironman for her and for our marriage. And with that, that's my marital advice for everybody.
I was going to say, it's one of those things too. It's sometimes hard for us to get out of our own way and for us to acknowledge someone else's feelings. We talked about this morning. Sometimes people just can't do the self-evaluation to know this is what's best for the team, best for the organization, best for my marriage, best for myself. And for you to be able to do that, I think that was great. And look, the marriage has lasted longer because of it.
So far.
And you and I hopefully get selected, go to the London Marathon next year.
Yes.
So that will be great.
Got to tell people we've signed up for it.
So we signed up for the London Marathon next year. We'll know in July if we're going to get selected to be able to do that. So Dave and I, you'll have a teammate this time to be able to go do that. And great place for our wives to come to and support us as well.
Yep. All right. You know how to wrap this up?
I'm not a professional. I'll leave it up to you.
We'll do this together. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. We'll do it again. I don't know. The format might be a little different as maybe we'll do something on the investment side. But we've talked about doing this for a while. And in fact, you came up with it. Brandon said, you know what I'd like to do on one of your podcasts? I'm going to interview you. People need to see a little bit more of who Dave Simons is instead of just on the career side of stuff. Well, what makes you tick? I don't know if people are going to be happy they know that now. We'll see.
We'll see. No, I think it was great for us to have this conversation. I think people know you from a professional level, but then a personal level. And you bringing that personality into the meetings is what clients love and what clients, they yearn to continue to have that relationship with you and get to know you more, just like they do with everybody else on the team. But I think it was a great opportunity for other people who aren't clients right now just to know who you are.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Hey, everybody, thanks for sitting through this. And if you're new to the podcast, like I always say to everybody, make sure you hit subscribe. That actually is going to keep me doing these podcasts for some while to make sure and to know that you're getting some enjoyment out of this. So we'll get back to the regular Simon Says podcast starting next week. Until then, thanks so much for tuning us in, and we'll see you again soon.